Hello, boys and girls, moms and dads, everybody. Aunt Carole here. I hope you're enjoying the book. We're getting right near the end of it. I'm ready to read chapter 24. Trouble Returns. The next morning, Grandma Honker had to be put in the doghouse early. She went on a rampage that was something to behold. We heard Warden Ollie out in the lakeshore at daybreak trying to keep peace in his family. A dozen animal voices were talking all at once, each trying to tell his side of the story. We stepped out of our cabins to see what was going on in this soft gray light of morning. Drummer was there, and right beside him was Grandma acting like a one-goose revolution. Gibber and Jabber were there, and we could distinguish their soft grunts in the melee. The two otters were on hand, too. So were Bigfoot the rabbit, Joe the raven, and a number of others, all trying to get to the food Warden Ollie had for them. But Grandma was making them all decidedly unwelcome. "You long-necked nuisance," we heard Ollie say. "Let the otters alone. They won't hurt you, old grouse. Now don't tangle with them porcupines, or you'll be mighty sorry. Here, stay away from Bigfoot. Let Joe alone. That chipmunk won't hurt your partridge." And so it went. Grandma nipped everyone. We heard one yipe after another as she undertook to enforce her decree that all of them had to disappear when Drummer was around. Presently they were gone, and only the big goose and the little grouse strutted about. "Now look at that. Go ahead in there. Look what ye went and done," Ollie remonstrated. "None of them folks had their breakfast, and ye old witch, ye chased them away. If you think I'm going to stand for that, ye got another guess a-comin'. Into the doghouse ye go till those folks eat." "Squawk!" went Grandma, as Warden Ollie wrapped his long arms about her and lifted her from the ground. She was an armload for him, though. One wing got free of his grasp and beat the air furiously. Then the other one got loose, but Ollie hung on to the rest of Grandma and waddled over to the doghouse. He poked the reluctant goose inside and shut the door. Immediately her head and long neck came out the window, and she gave a series of resentful squawks. "Y'all yell all ye want to," Ollie panted. "Learn how to behave yourself, and ye won't get put in jail. Now stay there till these other folks get something to eat." Ollie heard our laughter now and signaled us to come down to him. "Sorry my children misbehave," he apologized. "I do my best to train 'em right. Now, want to help me serve breakfast?" We did. Presently we had as guests 2 porcupines, 1 fox, 1 cat, 1 raven, 2 crows, 2 otters, 3 chipmunks, 1 grouse, and a squirrel. Grandma watched from the window in the doghouse, thinking what a disturbance she could cause if she were only free. Sonia took some bites of bread to her, and the goose accepted them, but her actions showed she would still like to get out of there and start another riot. It was not until we had eaten breakfast and the day was well underway that Grandma Honker was released. All the animals were gone except Gibber and Jabber, so she chased them up a tree and then took up her vigilant guard over Drummer. "Watch this," said Ollie, pointing to the pair of birds. They were walking slowly toward the lake. "Grandma tries her best to make a goose out of that partridge." They were struggling along, Grandma in the lead, Drummer following a few feet behind. The goose waddled right into the water and swam with the easy grace of her kind. The grouse walked to the edge of the lake and stopped. He looked at his bodyguard curiously and gave his short, chirping call. Grandma said a few things to him in goose language that could probably have been interpreted as, "Come on in, pal, the water's fine." But Drummer chirped back, "Sorry, slugger, but my people don't do such things. Better come out of there before you all get rusty." Grandma decided leadership was needed, so she came out on shore again, marched the grouse in a circle, and then led the way into the water. Drummer stopped short as before, and the argument went on between them. Then Grandma decided to use more forceful measures. She came out on shore, got back of Drummer, and tried her best to push him into the water. Drummer wouldn't stand for this. He bent his head low to the ground and made a run for the nearby bushes. Grandma followed him, looking back resentfully at our laughter. "You see," Ollie called to her, "even you can't boss everybody." Sonia and Dorothy decided to take a walk down one of the forest trails. Things were quiet for the time being in Ollie's menagerie. Gibber and Jabber were the only animals in sight, and they were high in a tree. Sonia tapped on the tree and called to them, but they wouldn't come down. "I guess it's time for their morning nap," she said to Ollie. "It's always time for their nap," he answered. "Porcupines are the sleepiest things I ever saw. They just go from one nap to another. Maybe when you come back from your hike, they'll be more sociable. Take that trail yonder." He pointed to a pathway leading away from his clearing. "It leads to a little lake where there's a beaver house. Beavers may not be there, but just make yourselves to home." Here's a picture of them taking a walk down the trail in the woods. My, looks like a deep woods, but the sun's shining through. Dorothy and Sonia had a many-sided adventure on this woodland walk. In later conversations, we learned from them of their experiences. They had the feeling that they were wandering in Warden Ollie's woods of long, long ago. They had not gone far when a grouse flew up at their very feet with his noisy flurry of wings, frightening Dorothy nearly out of her shoes. She practically stepped on a rabbit, and the bewildered bunny went dashing through the underbrush. "The only reason I didn't climb a tree was because I couldn't move a muscle," Dorothy said in telling of the incident. They reached the small lake and stood in silence, looking out at the beaver house near the shore. Their silence and Dorothy's peace of mind were broken when there was a startling crash close to them in the woods. A large decayed birch tree had given way and fallen to the ground. "I jumped straight up in the air and had a hard time to get down again," Dorothy recounted the experience. "I know at least a dozen bears must have pulled that tree down." Was Sonia frightened? Not in the least. She was having a wonderful time consoling her mother and assuring her that nothing would harm her. Then a pine cone fell from a tree and struck Dorothy on the head. It wasn't a hard blow, but it was wholly unexpected and brought forth one of Dorothy's pet shrieks. "Sonia!" she exclaimed. "We must go back. This whole forest is against me. Next thing, some monkeys will be pelting me with coconuts." "Coconuts don't grow here, Mother, and neither do monkeys," Sonia said. "Well, then, lions will throw bananas at us," her mother insisted, starting down the trail. They had come in sight of the clearing about Warden Ollie's cabins when they saw a waddling porcupine coming to them. "Look, Mother," cried Sonia, "it's Gibber, or else it's Jabber." "So it is," Dorothy agreed. "And now, Sonia dear, watch your mother. I know just how Warden Ollie handles this fellow." She walked unhesitatingly up to the slow old creature, talking to it constantly. Boldly taking it by the front feet, she lifted it up and brought it to rest on her arm. "See?" she asked Sonia. "Didn't I do that well? Come on, we'll take Gibber to Jabber or Jabber to Gibber, as the case may be." We saw Sonia and Dorothy come marching out of the woods, Dorothy holding the porcupine proudly for us to see. "What you got there?" Ollie asked. "Gibber or Jabber," Dorothy answered with a smug smile. "Can't be," said Ollie. "My two porkies is still up a tree. See 'em yonder?" Sure enough, we could make out Gibber and Jabber still engrossed in their nap in the very tree they had climbed hours back. Dorothy's eyes grew larger and larger as light dawned on her. Her mouth dropped open. Then, what is this thing?" she whispered. "Looks to me like he picked up a wild porky," Ollie said calmly. "No more tame ones about here." "Eek!" screamed Dorothy, hurriedly depositing the porcupine on the ground. Up went the porky's quills, and he ran in his funny half-sideway manner for the woods, doubtless wondering what kind of animal he had found that picks a fellow up and carries him affectionately one minute and plunks him on the ground the next. Why does everything happen to me?" Dorothy asked when she could speak once more. We could see shivers run from her head to her feet, one after another. "Guess nature's sort of initiating you into her clan," Ollie suggested. The remaining hours at Ollie's were packed with interest. Grandma got out of the doghouse on her promise of good behavior. She remembered the bracelet Sonia had brought to her and went to the bush where she had left it. Warden Ollie had the jewelry in his pocket, and he hurried over to drop it on the ground for the goose. She picked up the bright article and carried it about her in her beak for some time, then hid it again. We watched the goose as she went for a swim. Suddenly, she took off on her wings and soared high above the treetops. "She's a-flying more lately," Warden Ollie commented. "It's getting near time for geese to go south, and I guess she's training up for the trip. I'll miss the go-ahead and their old nuisance." Sonia was nearly in tears when she bade Warden Ollie farewell. "Nope, little chickadee," he said, taking her in his arms. "Woods people don't cry. No tears now." And then he had to wipe some from his own eyes. It was late in the evening when we reached the Eck cabin on our return from Ollie's. "So much has happened, I feel as if we've been away from here for a month," Dorothy said. "It's given us wonderful memories to live on during the winter," Dick said. Sonia said nothing. Woods people don't cry, and there were still tears trying to get out. We walked over to the cabin door with the X. "Every scrap of food I put out is gone," Dick exclaimed. "We must have fed a mob of raccoons." "The garbage can is tipped over," Dorothy noted. Sonia reached in the screen door and turned on lights in the cabin kitchen. "Mother!" she cried. "Mother, look!" We were all beside her quickly. What a sight met our eyes! The house looked as if it had passed through a private earthquake. "Coons have been in the house," Dick declared with a groan. "They opened the door and went in." "Opened the door?" Sonia was excited. "Loony Coon could do that. Is he back?" "My house! Look at it!" Dorothy was just realizing the extent of the mess before us. Canisters that had stood on the kitchen counter had been tipped over, and flour, sugar, tea, and coffee were mixed in one grand conglomeration over floor and sink. Cans and condiments had been pulled off cabinet shelves. Boxes of breakfast food, packages of raisins, crackers, dry beans, cornmeal, and other ingredients had been combined in one wild mixture. Raccoon pormocks were all over the floor and up the wall. "The icebox has been opened," Dorothy cried as we made our way with difficulty through the debris. "Oh, look at this! Eggs, oranges, butter, mustard, salad dressing, vegetables." All were in disorderly piles right where they had fallen and had been mixed by raccoon feet. "Oh, can we buy the cabin and just burn it down?" Dorothy moaned, wringing her hands. "We can never clean this up." "I have news for you," Dick said. He had just switched on the light in their living room. "Your guest has been in here, too." "No, no," begged Dorothy. "What did he do in there?" There was no need to answer. A look into the next room told all. The books were pulled out from the shelves and lying all over the floor. Floor lamps were overturned. Several potted plants lay upside down on the floor. The dirt and flowers spread far and wide. A bottle of ink was overturned on the desk, the black fluid lying in a puddle from which led the black tracks of raccoon feet. A box of chocolate candy had been discovered by the intruder, and the contents were gone. Dorothy put her hands over her face to shut out the picture. "Mother," Sonia said softly. Mother didn't answer at first. "Mother," came Sonia's voice again. "Do you see what I see?" Dorothy looked up and followed the direction of Sonia's pointing finger. All our eyes came to rest on a round puddle of flour, jam, jelly, and whatnot mixed with fur, curled up in the middle of Dick's favorite chair. Even as we watched speechlessly, the puddle began to move. Paws and legs emerged. Then a besmirched raccoon with sleepy eyes and a droopy left ear sat up, stretched, and yawned. You villain!" I shouted, pointing my finger accusingly at the animal. Up came the left front foot in that circular gesture that said, "Hi!" "Loony Coon!" cried Sonia, running to him. "Loony Coon, it is you! You came back! Oh, Loony Coon!" We all looked at Dorothy. Would this ordeal be too much for her? What would be the reaction to this horrible mess in her home? She was staring at Sonia, now kneeling beside the young raccoon. "Isn't that the cutest thing you ever saw?" she asked. And she joined Sonia on her knees while they both stroked Loony Coon's flour-powdered head. I think they're very fond of Loony Coon, but I'm thinking he's very fond of making an awful mess, isn't he? Well, I think Dorothy's getting over a lot of her fear of animals. There's only one more chapter left in this book. Then we'll have to start something else, won't we? Well, goodbye for now, everybody. God bless.